And Hezekiah prayed before God as noun and verb and said, God is noun and verb, God of Yisrael, which dwellest between the cherubim. Thou art God, even thou alone of all the kingdoms of the earth. Thou hast made the heaven and the earth. God is noun and verb. Bow down thine ear and hear. Open, God is noun and verb, thine eyes, and see and hear the words of Sennacherib, which he hath sent him to reproach the living God. Of a truth, God is noun and verb. The kings of Assyria have destroyed the nations and their lands, and have cast what they consider to be their gods into the fire, for they were no gods. See, that unveils the whole language of their God stuff, because you can use that phrase without negating that phrase. But the work of men's hands, wood and stone, therefore they've destroyed them. Now therefore, God is noun and verb, our God. I beseech thee, save thou us out of his hand, that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that thou art. God is noun and verb, God, even thou only. Then Yeshaiah, the son of Amoz, sent to Hezekiah, saying, Thus saith God is noun and verb, God of Yisrael, that which thou hast prayed to me against Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, have I heard. This is the word that God is noun and verb has spoken concerning him. The virgin daughter of Tzkiun hath despised thee, and laughed thee to scorn. So see, it's not just good behavior, it's, in certain respects, it's more inclusive, right? The daughter of Jerusalem hath shaken her head at thee. Whom hast thou reproached and blasphemed? And against whom hast thou exalted thy voice and lifted up thine eyes on high? The cherubim are the worshiping angels. There's no S because im is the plural. Cherubim. Even against the Holy One of Yisrael. By the messengers thou hast reproached, God is noun and verb, and hast said, With the multitude of my chariots I am come up to the height of the mountains, to the sides of Lebanon, and will cut down the tall cedar trees thereof, and the choice fir trees thereof, and I will enter into the lodgings of his borders, and into the forests of his Carmel, because thy rage against me and thy tumult is come up into mine ears. Therefore I will put my hook in thy nose, and my bridle in thy lips, and I will turn thee back by the way by which thou comest. Now, let me remind that cherub is really pronounced cherubim. Well, I mean, the plural of cherub, Therefore, thus saith God as noun and verb concerning the king of Assyria. He shall not come into the city, nor shoot an arrow there, nor come before it with the shield, nor cast a bank against it. By the way that he came, by the same shall he return, and shall not come into this city, saith God as noun and verb, for I will defend this city to save it for mine own sake, and for my servant Dawood's sake. And it came to pass that night that the angel of God as noun and verb went out, and by angel they mean the light being, an ungendered thing, although we typically think of Gabriel and Michael and stuff as male, but no, not really, actually, went out and smote in the camp of the Assyrians 180,000. And when they arose early in the morning, behold, they were all dead corpses. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, departed and went and returned and dwelt in Nineveh. And it came to pass, as he was worshipping in the house of Nisrach, what he considered to be his god, and Adramelech, and Sharezer, is it Sharezer? His sons smote him with the sword, and they escaped into the land of Armenia. And Esarhaddon his son reigned instead. In those days was Hezekiah sick unto death, and the prophet Isaiah the son of Amoz came to him and said to him, Thus saith God, is the noun and verb, set thine house in order, for thou shalt die and not live. And he turned his face to the wall and prayed unto God as noun and verb, saying, I beseech thee, God as noun and verb, remember now how I have walked before thee in truth and with a perfect heart, and have done that which is good in thy sight. And Hezekiah wept sore. And it came to pass, before Isaiah was gone out into the middle court, that the word of God as noun and verb came to him, saying, Turn again and tell Hezekiah, the captain of my people, thus saith God as noun and verb, the God of Dawood thy father, I have heard thy prayer, and have seen thy tears. Behold, I will heal thee on the third day. Thou shalt go up unto the house of God as noun and verb, and I will add unto thy days 15 years, and I will deliver thee and this city out of the hand of the king of Assyria. And I will defend the city for mine own sake, and for my servant Dawood's sake. And Yeshaiah said, Take a lump of figs. And they took and laid it on the boil, and he recovered. And Hezekiah said unto the king, said unto Yeshaiah, What shall be the sign that God as noun and verb will heal me, and that I shall go up into the house of God as noun and verb on the third day? And Yeshaiah said, This sign shalt thou have of God as noun and verb, that God as noun and verb will do the thing that he hath spoken. Shall the shadow go forward 10 degrees, or go back 10 degrees? And Hezekiah answered, It is a light thing for the shadow to go down 10 degrees. Nay, but let the shadow return backward 10 degrees. And Yeshaiah the prophet cried unto God as noun and verb, and he brought the shadow 10 degrees backward, by which it had gone down in the dial of Ahaz. At that time, Berodach Baladan, the son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent letters and a present unto Hezekiah, for he had heard that Hezekiah had been sick. And Hezekiah hearkened unto them, and showed them all the house of his precious things, the silver and the gold and the spices and the precious ointment, and all the house of his armor, and all that was found in his treasures. And there was nothing in his house, nor in all his dominion, that Hezekiah showed them not. Then came Yeshaiah the prophet unto King Hezekiah, and said unto him, What said these men, and from whence came they unto thee? And Hezekiah said, They are come from a far country, even from Babylon. And he said, What have they seen in thine house? And Hezekiah answered, All the things that are in mine house have they seen. There is nothing among my treasures that I have not shown them. And Yeshaiah said unto Hezekiah, Hear the word of God as a noun and verb. Behold, the days come that all that is in thine house, and that which thy fathers have laid up in store unto this day, shall be carried into Babylon. Nothing shall be left, saith God as noun and verb, and of thy sons that shall issue from thee, which thou shalt beget, shall they take away, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. And then said Hezekiah unto Yeshaiah, Good is the word of God as noun and verb, which thou hast spoken. And he said, Is it not good if peace and truth be in my days? And the rest of the acts of Hezekiah and all his might, and how he made a pool and a conduct and brought water into the city, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Yehuda? And Hezekiah slept with his fathers, and Manasseh his son reigned in his stead. So we see proof there that the Bible, it is a compilation of books. Some of them rely upon each other, some of them don't. But it's not like the compilation of the Bible was, oh, well, it's this, Some prophet comes and says that, oh, put these books together that you have. It doesn't claim that. And we also have the idea that the perceived future can be changed, or at the very least, what can be the, but not really change. You could say, as the result of this, what we thought was going to be the future isn't the future. The reform of Yeshua, or is it Yeshua? I'll just say Yeshua. Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and reigned 55 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Hephzibah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of God as noun and verb, after the abomination of those who turned their back on God, whom God as noun and verb cast out before the children of Yisrael. For he built up again the high places which Hezekiah his father had destroyed, and he reared up altars for Baal, and made a grove, for Asherah, as did Ahab the king of Yisrael, and worshipped all the hosts of heaven, and served them. And Manasseh slept with his fathers, and was buried in the garden of his own house, in the garden of Uzzah, and is it Asa, instead of Uzzah? And Amon his son reigned in his stead. And he did that which was evil in the sight of God as noun and verb, as his father Manasseh did. I don't know if that's a sheen in there or something, but we see a lot of people that use tarot cards, use them to worship a pantheon. Now, you can worship the same God in different qualities. You can refer to cosmology without doing that, but that's the sort of practice that's carried on by a lot of readers. And nowadays, a lot of people worshiping saints and stuff, and even their Trinity is not enough for them. They have to worship saints and angels and stuff like. Well, they don't have to, but they feel like they need to, and somehow it doesn't count. And if they're monotheist, if they're monotheistic, then what religion isn't really? And it walked in all the way that his father walked in, and served the idols that his father served, and worshipped them. And the servants of Ammon conspired against him, and slew the king in his own house. And the people of the land slew all them that had conspired against King Ammon. And the people of the land made Yeshua his son king in his stead. And Yeshua was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Yedidah, the daughter of Adaiah of Boskath. And he did that which was right in the sight of God as noun and verb, and walked in all the way of Dawood his father, and turned not aside from the right hand or to the left. Well, in the sight of the true God is of this world and age, right, would be the important thing. But you kind of feel like, well, not the people didn't agree, but people have agreed on all sorts of stuff. So, popularity never makes it right. And it came to pass in the 18th year of King Yesya that the king sent Shaphan, his son, the son of Azaliah, the son of Meshullam, the scribe, to the house of God as noun and verb, saying, Go up to Hilkiah, the high priest, that he may sum the silver which is brought into the house of God as a noun and verb, which the keepers of the door have gathered of the people, and let them deliver it into the hand of the doers of the work that have the oversight of the house of God as a noun and verb, and let them give it to the doers of the work which is in the house of God as a noun and verb, to repair the breaches of the house, unto carpenters and builders and masons to buy the timber and hewn stone to repair the house. Howbeit there was no reckoning made with them of the money that was delivered into their hand, because they dealt faithfully. And Hilkiah the high priest said unto Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of God as a noun and verb. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan, and he read it. And Shaphan the scribe came to the king, and brought the king word again, and said, Thy servants have gathered the money that was found in the house, and have delivered it into the hand of them that do the work, that have the oversight of the house of God as a noun and verb. And Shaphan the scribe showed the book to the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest hath delivered me a book. And Shaphan read it before the king. And it came to pass, when the king had heard the words of the book of the law, that he rent his clothes. And the king commanded Hilkiah the priest, and Ahikam the son of Shaphan, and Achbor the son of Micaiah, and Shaphan the scribe, and Asahiah, a servant of the king, saying, Go ye and inquire of God as a noun and verb for me and the people, and for all Yehudah, concerning the words of the book that is found. For great is the wrath of God as a noun and verb that is kindled against us, and because our fathers have not hearkened unto the words of this book, to do so according to all that which is written concerning us. So Hilkiah the priest, and Ahikam, and Achbor, and Shaphan, and Asahiah, could even be Asachia, it's hard to guess sometimes, went unto Huldah the prophetess, the wife of Shallum the son of Tikva, the son of Harhas. Well, the Persian names, you're going to use a V instead of a W, but so Nineveh is actually correct, but not the biblical pronunciation. The son of Harhas, the keeper of the wardrobe. Now she dwelt in Jerusalem in the college, and they communed with her, and she said unto them, Thus saith God as a noun and verb, God of Yisrael, tell the man that sent you to me. Thus saith God as a noun and verb, Behold, I will bring evil upon this place, and upon the inhabitants thereof, even all the words of the book which the king of Yehudah hath read, because they have forsaken me, and have burned incense unto other entities, that they might provoke me to anger with all the works of their hands. Therefore my wrath shall be kindled against this place, and shall not be quenched. And the burnt offerings, they evoke those who are present, but to worship, even the unseen things. But, if you're worshiping something other than God with them, that's the whole thing. It's like I've went to a house of worship that was one of the mosques. It was a temporary place, so I guess it was a musalla. Some guy came there and was lighting incense to attract angels, and this was not allowed in that religion, but he had picked up that idea from somewhere. I think I don't remember what he sounded like or whatever, but I think he might have been a immigrant, and in some countries they say the word sunnah and hadith, and they don't know what sunnah or whose tradition or who's saying, and but sometimes it's good to regard what the religion is. What the religion actually teaches, rather than just what some person does. They're allowed their own spirituality, but yeah. But to the king of Yehudah, which sent you to inquire of God as a noun and verb, Thus shall you say to him, Thus saith God as noun and verb, God of Yisrael, as touching the words which thou hast heard, because thine heart was tender, and thou hast humbled thyself before God as noun and verb, when thou heardest what I spoke against this place and against the inhabitants thereof, that they should become a desolation and a curse, and hast rent thy clothes and wept before me. I also have heard thee, saith God as noun and verb. Behold, therefore, I will gather thee unto thy fathers, and thou shalt be gathered into the grave in peace, and thine eyes shall not see all the evil which I will bring upon this place. Now, evil, I don't think the word evil is used. I think that's like the Christian way of saying it. Could be, but I think it's like some, all the negativity perhaps might be a better way to say that. And they brought the king word again. And the king sent, and they gathered unto him all the elders of Yehuda and of Jerusalem. And the king went up to the house of God as noun and verb, and all the men of Yehuda and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him, and the priests and prophets and all the people, both small and great, to be read in their ears all the words of the book of the covenant which was found in the house of God as a noun and verb. And the king stood by a pillar and made a covenant before God as noun and verb, to walk after God as noun and verb, and to keep his commandments and the testimonies of his statutes with all their heart and all their soul, to perform the words of this covenant which were written in this book. And all the people stood to the covenant, and the king commanded Hilkiah the high priest, and the priest of the second order, and the keepers of the door, to bring forth out of the temple of God as noun and verb all the vessels that were made for Baal, and for the groves, and for all the host of heaven, and he burned them without Jerusalem, outside the walls, in the fields of Kidron, and carried the ashes of them unto Bethal. And he put down the idolatrous priests, whom the kings of Yehuda had ordained to burn incense in the high places in the cities of Yehuda, and in the places round about Jerusalem, them also that burned incense unto Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the planets, and to all the host of heaven. And he brought out the grove from the house of God as noun and verb without Jerusalem unto the brook Kidron, and burned it at the brook Kidron, and stamped it small to powder, and cast the powder thereof upon the graves of the children of the people, and broke down the houses of the Sodomites that were by the house of God as noun and verb, where the women wove hangings for the groves. And he brought all the places out of the cities of Yehuda, and defiled the high places where the priest had burnt incense. Hopefully just ritually impure instead of doing some filthy thing, right? From Geba to Beersheba, and broke down the high places of the gates that were in the entering in of the gate of Yeshua, Yahusha, is that how you say Joshua? The governor of the city, which were on a man's left hand at the gate of the city. Nevertheless, the priest of the high places came not up to the altar of God as noun and verb in Jerusalem, but they did eat of the unleavened bread among their brethren. And he defiled Topheth, which is in the valley of the children of Hinnom. Gehinnom is, where later becomes the metaphor for hell of the afterworld, that no man might make his son or daughter to pass through the fire to Moloch. And, Malach Taus, Gnog, Manog, stinking body, who the Yazidi worship. And the Yazidi go far, far back before, some Sufi wrote down a few books. And he took away the horses that the kings of Yehuda had given to the sun at the entering in of the house of God as noun and verb, by the chamber of Nathan Melech the chamberlain, which was in the suburbs, and burnt the chariots of the sun with fire, and the altars that were on the top of the upper chamber of Ahaz, which the kings of Yehuda had made, and the altars which Manasseh had made in the two courts of the house of God as noun and verb, did the king beat down and broke them down from thence, and cast the dust of them into the brook Kidron, and the high places that were before Jerusalem, which were on the right hand of the mount of corruption, which Shlomo, the king of Yisrael, had builded for Ashtaroth. I think that's a T at the end. Ashtaroth, the abomination. Yeah, that's definitely not the TH. The abomination of the Sidonian, and for Chemosh, the abomination of the Moabites. Yeah, I addressed the whole Chemosh thing in one of my seasonals. The Moabim, and for Milcom, the abomination of the children of Ammon, did the king defile. And he broke in pieces the images and cut down the groves and filled their places with the bones of men. Well, some people ritually use the charnel houses, so that's not going to stop everyone. And like unto him, there was no king before him that turned unto God as noun and verb with all his heart and with all his soul and with all his might, according to all the law of Moshe. Neither after him arose there any like him. Now, the rest of the acts of Isaiah and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Yehuda in his days? Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went against the king of Assyria to the river Euphrates, and the king Isaiah went against him and slew him at Megiddo. When he had seen him, and his servants carried him in a chariot dead from Megiddo, and brought him to Jerusalem, and buried him in his own sepulchre, and the people of the land took Jehoahaz, the son of Yesaiah, and anointed him, and made him king in his father's stead. Now, when it says anointed, made the Messiah, to give understanding of that term, right? The fall of Yehuda, and Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim, the son of Yesaiah, king in the rooms of Yesaiah his father, and turned his name to Jehoiakim, and Jehoahaz, and took Jehoahaz away, and he came to Egypt and died there. And Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. In his days, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up. Now, there's two variations of the Nebuchadnezzars, and don't they average out to 666? And Jehoiakim became his servant 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Yehuda? So Jehoiakim slept with his fathers, and Jehoiakim his son reigned in his stead. And Jehoiakim was 18 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. At that time the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against Jerusalem, and the city was besieged, and Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against the city, and his servants did besiege it. And Jehoiakim, the son of Yehuda, went out to the king of Babylon, he and his mother, and his servants, and his princes, and his officers, and the king of Babylon took him in the 8th year of his reign, and he carried out thence all the treasures of the house of God as noun and verb, and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces all the vessels of gold which Shlomo, the king of Yisrael, had made in the temple of God as noun and verb. And God as noun and verb had said, and he carried away all Jerusalem, and all the princes, and all the mighty men of valor, even 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and smiths. None remained, save the poorest sort of the people of the land. And he carried away Jehoiakim to Babylon, and the king's mother, and the king's wives, and his officers, from the mighty men of the land, those who carried into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon, and all the men of might, even 7,000, and craftsmen and smiths 1,000, all that were strong and apt for war, even them the king of Babylon brought captive to Babylon. And the king of Babylon made Mattaniah, his father's brother, king in his stead, and changed his name to Zedekiah, probably Thadakiah. And Thadakiah was 21 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Yirmiah of Libnah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of God as noun and verb, according to all that Jehoiakim had done. For through the anger of God as noun and verb, it came to pass in Jerusalem and Yehudah, until he had cast them out from his presence, that Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. See, even a good name, you can't expect people to be good necessarily. Well, I mean, they should be, they can, but... And it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his host, against Jerusalem, and pitched against it, and they built forts against it round about. And the city was besieged unto the 11th year of King Zedekiah. And on the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine prevailed in the city, and there was no bread for the people of the land. And the city was broken up, and all the men of war fled by night by the way of the gate between the two walls, which is the king's garden. Now the Chaldees were against the city round about, and the king went the way toward the plain, and the army of the Chaldees pursued after the king, and overtook him in the plains of Yerchu, and all his army were scattered from him, so that they took the king and brought him to the king of the king of Babylon to Riblah, and they gave judgment upon him, and they slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, and put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and bound him with fetters of brass, and carried him to Babylon.